Boo ba doo ba doo ba doo boo boo. Boo ba doo. Do 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 do. Well, it looks like I am live. I'm not really going to talk too much about the topic at hand for about 5 minutes because I scheduled this live stream and it's scheduled for 8:30, so I don't really want to talk about the principal topic until 8:30 and 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. But I figured it looks like this thing is out of whack. In my other screen, which you guys can't see, I'm gonna do a little preparatory work here as I'm sort of getting ready to do my thing. So, in other words, even though I'm live, I'm not officially live yet. Now, if you're here and you want to say hello, feel free to chime in the chat. And I'm going to just keep doodling here for a bit because I'm having a good time doing it. And then you guys, I will turn my attention to you, my friends, here in just a short time. Okay, so there's that. Kind of interesting. I think I'm going to go over to a different level here. Turn off the pencil effect. Yeah, that's just a nicer quality line. So tonight, hey Nagut, I'll just kind of keep doodling as I'm doodling until we get to the official live stream time. But again, the connection was looking good, and so I decided to just go ahead and turn it live. Now, Nagut, since you're here, and good day to you too. By the way, you say good day. Does that mean you're, I may be presumptuous to assume, but does that mean you're in Australia? As in, good day, mate, kind of thing? And, hang on one second. Gotta check something. Thought I saw what looked like somewhat suspicious activity outside my window, and because I just caught something out of the corner of my eye, I wasn't really sure what I saw. Okay, New Zealand. All right. So I wouldn't want to call a Kiwi an Aussie, so I'll be careful about that. Because I've heard you guys are a little touchy about that misdesignation, I guess you might say. Yeah, Australia's a little brother, but boy, New Zealand is such a beautiful land. It's one of the, if I was going to pick a few places in the world that I would want to visit, I'm sure that New Zealand would be one of them. So, yeah, that's cool. I love the fact that I had a great conversation today with a very dear friend of mine who's in India. And it's so cool how we can just connect live and in person with people that are literally on the opposite side of the world in a way that we didn't dream of, when I was a little nipper. Yeah, be very careful, right on. Fair enough, brother. Fair enough. I won't let fly with all I won't let fly with all those obnoxious little isms that they say the folks in Australia, talking about shrimp on the barbie and saying crikey and things like that you don't really say. Or maybe I will. Man, when you're a voice actor, you can't help it. It's always fun to play around with accents and stuff like that. So, I'm sure you'll forgive me. I am quite sure you will. So, Blifton's here tonight. Hey, Blifton. And Maria is here. Hey there, girlfriend. How you doing? So tonight, yeah, it's 8:30. Okay, so we can officially start. So what's the topic tonight? The preliminary, as I'm sitting here doodling, I'm not actually working on the show per se. I'm just drawing some of the characters. And it's been such a striking impact, I think, that doing oil painting this week has had on my drawing because of the drawing part of oil painting and what your brain has to do in order to try to create a likeness. And because I've been doing portraiture type painting. And I was just really kind of stunned as I sat down here just to draw how it was really affecting what I was doing. So it brought a couple things to mind. And by the way, there was one thing, since Nagut was here, hey, Full Chain, Nagut was here yesterday, I believe it was, when I was live streaming and talking about the painting stuff. And one question, well, I was talking about mastery, so I spent the first half hour talking about how you can master anything in 2 to 8 years. And I pretty much stand by that assertion. But somebody posted in the chat, asked me how long I had been doing animation, and as stupid as I am, it didn't even occur to me at the time that maybe he was saying, well, are you, you've been doing this since 2018. I basically had not done animation to speak of other than some 3D stuff, mostly playing around with Blender and Hash and going back for many years. Frazetta's one of my influences, that's for sure. But anyway, the implication of the question, to a degree, I suppose, was, well, how is your path toward mastery of animation going since you have been doing it 3 years? And that implication just whoosh, went right over my head when the question was asked. So I want to address that. I want to make an important distinction for you guys who are here often and follow what I'm doing, is that I do not consider myself a master of animation, and in fact, I don't even know that I'm trying to master animation. What I'm trying to do, I don't think the principles of animation are that difficult, and the things like tweening and just having an instinct for motion and life in in animation, I don't find that difficult. So when so if I was going to ask myself, well, what's the very, very best I can do as an animator? I think I probably can do a lot better than a lot of what I do if what you're looking for is, well, frankly, the kind of stuff full chain animation does. Okay? But I'm not really trying to become a master of animation. I'm trying to become a master of storytelling in the medium of animation, which means that for me, the storytelling part and really ultimately what shows up in the editor, the edited show, is pretty much all that's important to me, for the most part. Okay, now the thing that I think will improve the animation more than anything, however, is what I'm talking about tonight, which is just being better at drawing. Especially if you're approaching it from an anime vantage point. Since I'm talking about this now, I'll show you guys something that I watched that really affected my thinking about this. I was watching, we all recognize that Richard Williams' book, The Animator's Survival Kit, is kind of the, that's the seminal tome about animation. And look here. Richard Williams' magnum opus, if you will, The Thief and the Cobbler, is here on YouTube. Now it's a special edit, and it looks like there's a bunch of Russian subtitles. I don't know anything about the person who put this out, but so I don't know if it's authorized or whatever. I don't know anything about it other than I found it on YouTube. And the thing that really struck me about this, that I thought was really sad, is that I understand that as an animation purist, and I'm going to turn the sound off so we can just look at the movement. If you're an animation purist and you're just looking at the animation, and obviously with Richard Williams, if you look at Who Framed Roger Rabbit, there's no doubt that this is absolutely as smooth as silk, full 24 frame per second animation you're going to see. It's gorgeous. Yet, the story and the storytelling, unless you're really into this sort of avant-garde approach, because look, like the way those doors move and these legs of the horses, and a lot of times the pattern backgrounds like you see here, where he's got these pattern backgrounds, that it was just this torturous process to animate. And what I find sad about it is that if you actually look at the choices he made with what he did with his characters, the sad fact is, and some people probably get mad at me for saying this, but it is my sense watching it that if you did a basic 3/4 view drawing of your character and basically let the animation software do a lot of the tweening for you. In other words, basically what you're seeing on a lot of shows nowadays on Nickelodeon or Disney Channel or Cartoon Network. This show could have been done. I mean, what he did was amazing, but yet what he did could have been done 2 orders of magnitude more efficiently and arguably better, because the things that he did that were really crazy difficult, like a 3D turn, a full turn in 3D space, basically doesn't contribute much to the storytelling from what I could see. I mean, from what I watched of it. I didn't watch all of it, but it really struck me how, as a purist, I totally respect what he did here. But look at that. Did you see how that character, look how the characters moved. It looks a lot like what some of the choices Disney made in The Emperor's New Groove, where the characters are essentially locked in a 3/4 pose a lot of the time. And it's a really attractive approach to animation. It really works well. Well, it also lends itself really well to a digital approach. If you combined a rigged 3/4 view character with a little bit of deformation, like you can do with, the plastic tool in OpenTunes, or like you can do even better with Blender, then you could accomplish something like this a lot less painfully than it's pretty obvious that it was for Richard Williams. So it really struck me, for me to think about how, at the end of the day, I guess I really am a pragmatist, and it's the storytelling I care about, not animation per se. So when I think about the topic of mastery, what I'm trying to master for the most part is visual storytelling. And basically, why choose animation as the medium? Well, number one, it's kind of fun. And number two, I've kind of been there, done that with with live action movies, and going out on sets and running cameras and working with actors. I've done it. It's cool. I'll probably come back to it at some point. But anyway, okay, so having said that as a pretty long preliminary, I found it interesting that when I sat down to work tonight just doodling, actually, let me come back to here and show you something else. Let's go here to the paintings, because I did one more painting. So just to recap those who weren't here in the live stream about mastery yesterday, I showed you guys how literally over 3 days, my portrait painting, working with oils, went from this to, where's the second one? One of these dyslexia moments. Okay, here. Okay, so this is the one. To be quicker, I'll say here. I went from this to Smokey Joe Biden, and then here's what I did yesterday. What I did was I was actually looking into my laptop screen, which it's kind of dark. And I did this. Every time I look at this, it makes me laugh because it's so morose, and I look so depressed, and it's so sad. But yet, it's a pretty good likeness, actually. I mean, it's definitely recognizable as me, as is obviously this one. And I got a bunch of negative flack from my right-winger friends on Facebook telling me I was wasting my time in my painting that guy, which I think is about as stupid as humanly possible. I don't care what your politics are. I mean, I can have a conversation with you. If you're on the left or the right, it doesn't matter to me. I lean left, but it's just a painting, for crying out loud. And people are like having a cow about it. This one guy's like, hey, can I buy that and use it as a dartboard? And I'm like, you know what? Everything's for sale. You name your price and I'll tell you if I'm willing to sell it. The thing took me 2 hours, so why not? If he wants to destroy it for a certain price, I guess I really don't care. I've got the digital copy. And but the point is, this was day 4. Okay, so the question becomes tonight is, how does this inform animation work that I'm doing? And this is what I found. I sat down to draw today, and I drew this drawing of Mel, and I tell you guys, I've had a hard time staying on character with Mel. And one of the reasons for that is that when I think about drawing, I tend to be thinking, I think, as I'm thinking about it now, having this experience of seemingly all of a sudden kind of taking a jump in my ability a little bit, a little improvement. I'm thinking about, well, what the heck just happened here, And what I'm finding is I'm no longer thinking about the 2D projection of the character as much, and plus I'm probably not in as much of a hurry. So, but what I'm thinking about more now is I'm thinking about the 3D volumes that underlie what I'm trying to draw. And I'm feeling it, and when I'm holding the stylus, I'm actually holding it out more like a painter would that's sketching on the canvas. I'm still holding it like a pencil, but farther away. I'm not holding it up as tight like this. So I don't know if that helps anyone, but what I'm seeing with Mel is that Mel is kind of an inverted egg. And that's what makes him difficult to stay on character with, because actually there are not a lot of landmarks. If you go back here and look at Golek, let me do another Golek here kind of on the fly to see if I can, see if lightning's going to strike twice. And this is, to be accurate, this is not the most perfectly on character rendition of Golek. It's probably the best 3D rendition of Golek, sort of consistent actually with the maquette that I didn't look at this, but frankly, the maquette is kind of close. But anyway, but in terms of having 3-dimensionality, I was like, holy cow, something seems to have changed here. So when I'm drawing the skull, I'm thinking about these planes. This is where the painting, I think, is helping. I'm seeing these edges in these planes. And then I'm seeing the fact that, for example, his eyes, there's literally a piece chopped out of this shape. If you can think about it, it's literally chopped out. And if I were to, in this drawing here, I'm kind of looking up at him. So I would say if you're thinking about his nose, then, for example, I'm seeing these angular shapes that are very 3-dimensional. And So and so here, for example, I'm seeing a problem because I'm going, well, if the volume of this thing's coming around like this, and we chop this piece out of it, inside of which will be his eye sockets. So let me finish that out just so that that makes sense. So this is actually chopped out of the skull, and so the balls of his eyes, they're resting inside there. They're kind of inset a little bit, right? They're not on the surface. So, of course, Murphy's Law says I'll kind of do this and it'll fall apart and I'll do a crappy job. But so then his eyelids have volume. So this is kind of what I'm thinking about. Is I'm seeing those three-dimensional volumes, which are very sharp and chiseled. Now, when you render it, or especially when you ink it, of course you can smooth those out. This does not have to be as angular as this when I ink it. I mean, I can smooth that out and make it a little more, correctly on character. But as far as the drawing goes, I'm very much seeing these three-dimensional shapes. Now I'm exaggerating the slice that comes out of his face to put his mouth in there, just because it seems like that makes it easier to kind of see where I'm going here. And so this is a challenging angle that I'm drawing. But now I'm thinking about it. Okay, so I'm thinking in real time here. I'm going, well, what would we see? We've got to have these. This has got volume to it. This has got space. And correct, Maria's right. Golik's. Now I'm drawing him from kind of a tough angle, and what I'm doing in terms of the drawing is not really the style that I normally draw him. So his nose is way more complex here. I'm drawing him more like a comic book character, but it still helps. It's still a useful exercise. So what about here? Like in this ridge, there's an absolute ridge here. This is going to catch some light. Right, and this is the type of thing I'm seeing myself think about a lot more is, what would the actual volume of this be? His forehead's got some, there's a little bit of thickness to it, right? And then there's his skull, so we're looking up this way, right? So this is where I'm definitely finding that, at least my theory is that the life drawing and the painting, this is why I've been willing to give it some time. I've been willing to spend some time with that the last few days, because I just had a really strong sense that this is going to make everything else I do better, right, as I learn. Let me go back here and just look at the chat really quick. Blimp says, hey man, these look great. I think Blimp's referring to the paintings. Thank you. I appreciate it. The self-portrait, I'd like to do a happy one. I think it might be more indicative of who I really am. Who knows? So what I used to say to my trainees, think of the 3D form. Yes, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you saying that, because as you know, full chain animation, I'm always gushing over your work and can't say enough good about your ability. So I very much appreciate your observations and opinions here. So yeah, I mean, if I'm going to go ahead and give him that big square chin that he has, then I'm also thinking here, okay, we're looking up, so what about the volume? What about the three-dimensional shape? Well, we'd be catching a little bit here. I'm thinking that if you think about this, you probably actually, what you really have is this. So that's what's really going on, and this line is a little deceiving, okay? Because really his beard would actually follow a contour more like this, which is completely non-intuitive if you do what I've been doing a lot of the time, where I'm really fixated on the two-dimensional cartoon, right? And really good, I'm sure I'm safe in saying that really good animators would probably draw this convex shape instead of the concave shape, and you'd kind of like, it'd be really easy to miss. Like, why did that look good? Like, what did they do? And this stuff can kind of slip by you, especially if you're as dense as I am, right? So I'm just catching a little bit of his hair here, but again, with hair, it's really huge. You got to have the volume. When I did Mel, I was even thinking about this volume here in this shape. You know, obviously I'm making it very cubical, if you will. I don't know what the word is, but everything's got straight edges, right? Because when you're doing portraiture, that's kind of what you have to do, because the essence of portraiture basically is measuring. It's about measuring, and it's about trying to lay down a piece of paint, you know, one stroke that is the right value to catch the plane. You're trying to catch the plane. So if the form was not round, but if it was straight edges, you would see these clear different levels of value in the figure. You probably see it. Well, you guys can't probably see it, but let me see if I can go to the webcam only view and show this. This is a way back when I did this maquette of Golek. You know, I just did this with modeling clay. And so here, obviously because he's lit from underneath, it's wonderful. It's coming off of the tablet screen, so it makes him look evil. But really, this is a useful tool, because when I modeled this months ago, it's just sat on my desk, I was actually careful to make these edges sharper than they really needed to be, so that the variations in tone were clear, right, in terms of lighting and you know, just being able to draw the guy. So getting back to Mel, I'll go ahead and move past this Golek drawing, because I don't know if that's the best I've ever done. As I'm looking at it and criticizing it, what I'm seeing is that spatially this feels a little off. Like that feels better. Flip your canvas. That is always something you want to do, is flip your canvas to see. But yeah, definitely his... now, it could be argued that actually the problem is this eye being too wide as opposed to the other one being too narrow. So that, either way, it balances it out better. So anyway, onward and upward. When I did this drawing of Mel, it really occurred to me, so I'll draw this from an upward looking position as well. But being an upside down egg, we just don't have a lot of landmarks. So it's really, you know, what I'm feeling is I'm trying to be super sensitive to the three-dimensional shape. So let's just follow this through. So just drawing these lines on the egg are really helpful, because it gives me a guide to where that ear is going to be, for example. So I can feel that, you know. So if you're going to go that route, what I did here was kind of the same thing I did with Golek. I pretended that I'm going to actually chisel a big piece out. I'm actually taking like the end of a spoon and I'm cutting a piece out of the clay, you might say, right? So you have this big divot, and that provides a guide. Because we're looking up at him too, this is an interesting angle, because now for an anime type cartoon, well, what are you going to do with the nose? Well, I know there's going to be this little volume here. So probably when it's inked, it's just going to wind up being that. But it's really helpful, because it at least does tell you where the lines need to go, you know. So again, I don't know if this helps you guys much. And then Mel has kind of these little sort of One Punch Man type eyes. They're almost ovals, but not quite. And I'll have this Mel looking in the same direction as the other one. So you can kind of just feel the kind of a similar expression. And what I'm kind of seeing here is a little bit of the same problem I had with Golek, where I think I set his eyes too wide apart. But what I'm seeing happen is really, without a doubt, that this is, I'm finding it easier to be on character with these guys, right? And I like what I'm seeing. This drawing of Tianara, not quite sure how well that worked, but we can take this and I guess we'll give him a happy expression here. right? And so we're back to the same thing. We know that we've got this center point with his hair, right? And so now, what would happen? Well, you've got to think of it as being rectangular or boxy. You can't think of it as being a cylinder, because I think maybe that's a big thing that's kind of changing here is if you think of it as the rounded form that it is, it's impossible to see where the volumes are. I don't know if that makes sense. Whereas when you say, well, no, we're actually going to make this almost like a 3D model. We're going to make this geometric, okay? And by making it geometric, now I know where to put this stuff, right? And I know kind of how to foreshorten it. I can see, now this needs to come out a little further this way, but basically now I can go in and erase these guidelines, and I know that the basic volume of his hair is going to be pretty much where it needs to be. And as we pull back here, we can see that, so we're going to have a bit of a bump there with his, he's got kind of curly hair, right? And so it's fun. This is fun and it's cool because I can feel where the stuff is supposed to be and what the character is supposed to look like. And the coolest thing about it is I'm looking at it, I'm going, oh my God, that's Mel. It really is Mel. And one of the coolest things in your creative work is basically when you set an intention, you say, this is what I'm trying to do, and then you're actually able to do it. And especially if you know why it worked. You know what's working and what's not working. When you're flopping around, and aren't sure with your technique why things work, what happens is once in a while you get lucky. I think I've certainly been guilty of this. Once in a while you get lucky, and then the danger of getting lucky is that builds neural pathways in your brain where you think that a poor way of working is actually a good way of working, because once in a while you hit a home run. If you go up to bat and you close your eyes and you just swing as hard as you can every time, once in a while you're going to hit a home run. And that's really not a good thing. It's actually a pretty negative thing for you as an artist, because what you really want to do, what I want to do, is develop methodologies that become predictable, where I know if I sit down and I'm going to try to draw Mel, I'm going to successfully draw Mel, and it's going to look like Mel. And I'm not flopping around and guessing. In his case, one thing with him is his mouth. Okay, stylus, what the heck? There we go. His mouth's pretty. He's kind of like Sokka, I would say, in Avatar, where his mouth is kind of low on his head, and that's part of his look. It's sort of that teenager kind of look. I could see a little bit more volume up here. So, but I think you guys will agree that what we're seeing happen here is, even though it's still a flat two-dimensional cartoon, the basic three-dimensionality of the character and the characterization is all, just a little bit better maybe than it was, not that long ago. So hopefully that will continue. Now TNR is going to be more of a challenge. I'm going to get rid of this level where I did the ink. There's no need to keep it around. But she's an interesting case. She's kind of halfway between I'm looking at Maria's comment. His features are so mobile. I'm not sure what you mean by mobile features. And by the way, I'm going to go ahead and erase this eye and redo it. Okay, because I'm really, again, this is another thing that's valuable about the incrementalism I was talking about yesterday in the live stream, is that you get away from something, go work on this drawing, you come back and all of a sudden you see things you didn't see. So what I'm seeing here, again, three-dimensionality, is that this contour, if you draw this contour around the egg that is the shape of his head, this eye was sitting a little too high, and the top of it might be also sitting a little too high. So it seems to me that is closer. Now he's got a little bit of a sad eye, like a little doe-eyed characteristic here that really is not Mel, so that's better. This is actually wrong. This little sad-eyed thing going on is not really quite right for his character. That's way better, you know. Okay, so anyway, back to Tianara. So Tianara's essentially a ball on top of another ball. She has a characteristic similar to Tinkerbell in the Disney stuff. But when I think of that three-dimensionality stuff, this is what I see. First of all, there's a bit of a contour that comes up around this way, but there's also a contour that comes up around this way, kind of an eye line. And so if we're going to make her into this really sharp chiseled form the way I'm describing, you'd probably come up with something like that. And what happens is her eyes fall on the intersection between these two 3D volumes, and so do her ears. So it's easy to place her ears, although you usually don't see them because they're covered up with hair. Okay, so let's say, why don't we let's identify the center line then in her face. And now as I'm looking at this, I can put in the center line, but I'm also thinking about this. I'm thinking about this sort of chopped out piece again of the 3D volume that tells me where her kind of cheek line is. Okay? Now, and it's interesting because as you do these things and really try to see it, other things emerge. You start to see other things. So I see where the end point of her chin was feeling like it was pushed in a little too far. The cool thing about that is that that's something I might not have seen. Like just even a couple weeks ago, I might have let that get by and I wouldn't have seen it. So I guess to a degree, you don't know what you don't know, which can bite you in the butt. And it's really important because here I am. I'm doing a fairly ambitious project where there may be a frighteningly large number of elements of what I'm trying to do that I actually don't do that well. If you're gonna be honest about it. Okay, so I'm gonna chop out this one thing. I don't know. And by the way, Full Chain, if you're still around, you might let me know about this. One thing I've found with eyes is that if you actually chop this larger zone out of the skull like this, so that there's sort of an area for the eyes to sit inside of, so that you get a better feeling for how the eyes are inset into the skull, the eyeballs. This seems to be helping me, especially with foreshortening. So like when you're in a 3/4 view, the question is, and you see it all the time in anime, is how do you distort the further away eye in order to make it look right? Because you can see the shape is quite different. But what I've been finding is that by putting in these 3D volumes, and especially that chiseling out of the skull to create sort of this hole that the eyeball pokes out of, has helped me to not only get the eyes positioned better, but also get the foreshortening better. So, okay, you were gonna say, okay, cool, thank you, I appreciate that. I'm learning a lot of this by trial and error, obviously, which is probably not the best way to learn. Jeez, I wish you could come over here from the, I think it's the Philippines, is it? And maybe you could coach me. Okay, so her eyes look a little bit sultry in this particular pose, but we can correct for that a little bit. First of all, let's soften up the eyebrows. Okay, so we don't want to lose sight of the volume. So again, let's just go ahead and say, there's a little bit of a contour here. Look at that. Look at the way these shapes wrap around the skull, Okay, so we could say, and by the way, one thing you always want to do with girls is give them a little space between their eyes and their eyebrows. That little bit of an expressive space. Okay, so now her nose in a lot of drawings is kind of non-existent. So, but it would stick out and it would have a little bit of volume to it again. So let's just say, how about that? Okay, Now if we erase all these guidelines, let's see what we get. You know what? Not too bad. Not too bad. Again, a little bit of that Tinkerbell type look. And then in her case, I'm not, one thing I'm not doing here is I'm not doing too much with the volume of this, you know, the mouth. So, hey Amar, before any other details like jaws and such, you have a clear idea of how your character looks in his most basic construction. Yeah, for sure. Now, I mean, for me, it's probably a bit of a shortcut because I basically know my characters and I know what they're supposed to look like. But there was kind of a while there where that wasn't true. I was struggling with Mel for quite a while, trying to find the character. Again, embarrassing to admit that I could get as far into a project as I am and still be sort of trying to find the characters, but that's the truth, you know. So here we got the center line tells us where the bindu is, obviously, and then with a girl, she's typically going to have a. So what I'm gonna do here is, first of all, I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of the ear because it's going to be covered up anyway, and frankly, I'm going to cover this up as well because that's going to be covered by the hair. So in her case, you know, you could have this hair, and what I'm really going to be thinking of here is, again, 3D volume. So this has dimension to it. So it's got a front. It actually has a front. You see this all the time in Disney characters, like, I don't know, probably, you know, like Jasmine or something, where sometimes they'll even use different colors to sort of delineate this plane, this actual flat plane on their hairline, because it really helps. You know, it helps to identify the character. You know, if this was going on, then this volume would carry back this way like that, right? So now that's a little bit flat. With in some anime, what you're going to see is stuff like this, where you see these volumes of hair. Now, I'm not going to get into that with Salt and Light. That's moving in too much of a direction. It looks cool, and I'd love to do something more with it, but it's not really appropriate to this show, you know. So that's fine. But on balance, you know, I like what I see, and then sometimes, of course, you want to make some minor adjustments, and you know, maybe like that or whatever. But okay, creating well-designed characters with easy landmarks to remember is an art all on itself. Okay, basically think of an apple with a couple bites of it. Yeah, you're talking about the eyes. You're talking about, I think, you're talking about the eye shapes. Let's try another one. In fact, I'll really challenge myself here by doing a let's just go here and do a profile, okay? Because we don't often see these characters in profile. And so what I want to do right now, what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, I want to experience this, what I'm kind of experiencing in real time here, of feeling the three-dimensionality of the character as a drawing, doing something that maybe doesn't come up a lot in the show. So obviously we're going to have a contour here. If we have this, okay, so my sense would be that these two shapes would be probably something like that. And so now I'm going to see this. I should probably make this a little bigger for you guys, but okay, so I'm literally not making her nose. I'm leaving her nose off of her skull. And I'm basically saying that, and in fact, we're not going to have to draw the nose because that's pretty much it. But this volume here, you know, this intersection, that tells us where her ear is. And look at how I'm holding my stylus. I mean, I'm almost halfway up it. So I'm really keeping my distance from the paper. Of course, it's not paper, but okay. So same thing you said about the bites of the apple. So we've got this large zone here that we're going to chop out. Okay, so now let's just kind of think about these contours again. You know, there's a little bit of a plane here. In other words, if there was a light shining down this way, in point of fact, this area would catch some shadow. Not much, and you're not going to see it in a cartoon because it's flat shaded. But the reality is that there is some volume there. Okay? So now we can do the anime thing and put her mouth on the side of her head. That's fine. Okay, so now it becomes, well, what do we do with this girl's eyes? I don't know, there's a lot of approaches, but clearly it's going to be, her eyeball is actually here. Okay, if you want to think of it that way. So her eyeball is actually inside of her skull. Right? So if we give her kind of light eyes, and we know that this volume is here, so this volume is where her eyebrow would rest. Right? So this is definitely interesting. That's kind of a bit of a nonplussed look on her face, isn't it? Okay, so yeah, okay, yeah, full change just confirming, yes, that he was talking about the eyes, so. And then when we tighten it up, you know, I feel like we're getting the best of both worlds here in the sense that we've got that sort of cartoon character look, but yet the guts behind it, I think are increasingly, you know, good drawing, you know, good three-dimensional life drawing. And so that, again, was my point about the work that I've been doing paintings. Did you happen to see that, Amar? You'd probably dig it. Did you see the live stream yesterday about mastery? If not, I'll do a quick recap on the whole paintings thing. Okay, so now the question is, well, what about this characterization? And I definitely don't like the expression, but I mean, it's just one of a zillion expressions you might choose to give her. So as you can see, I'm going to redo her eyes. This is not bad. Tiny Salad, where are you at that it's morning? It's 9 p.m.-ish. Well, it's a little after 9. If I go quiet, my net's probably blinked out again. Okay, no problem. No problem, brother. Yeah, where are you at, Tiny Salad? What part of the world are you in? Yeah, it's 9 p.m. I'm Eastern time as well. So these are all valid choices. It depends on obviously what you're trying to do with the character for the shot in question. And it could be argued that maybe her eye is placed a little high on her head right there. And frankly, so is the Bindu. So that looks more like Tianara to me. So now the question, I guess what I was bumping into here had to do with her eyelids. If you do too much with the eyelids, it's like you want a little bit, you know, make her look like a girl, but yet, you know, but yet you don't want her to look sultry and too adult, I guess. Another thought here would be that maybe the eyebrow is a little bit low. But we can play around with this. So it looks like Amar's not answering. You're being Maria's being raided by her cats as usual. I keep seeing stuff out of the corner of my eye out there. Okay, and then since I'm feeling cheery, let's give Tianara a cheery demeanor. Okay. So that's not too bad. And key, there's a lot of ways you can approach noses in profile and in an anime type of, you know, production. And I'm not totally sold on this. I'm not totally sold on this. I want to go ahead and cut that out. I want to play with this a bit. Okay, so let's just run with this for a minute. If we give, okay, so that's interesting. It's mushed into her face too much. So this is where hitting the control key is kind of useful. But you know, I think there's a case to be made for a little bit more delineation of the nose, you know, for TNR. But it's maybe one of the reasons I avoid drawing her in profile, because okay, yeah, so you were I assume you were watching yesterday. Yeah, the paints exactly 12 hours apart. Oh, so it's 9 a.m. there. So is Tiny Salad? Oh, you're in Finland. Oh wow, 4 a.m. Now that's what time I usually get up. I was up in the morning here about 4:30 today. So I rise pretty early. You know, I wake up, I'm ready to go. So I get up, get some breakfast, and get things going. So, all right, let's keep going with this kind of thing. It's good practice. It's definitely good practice. So I'm going to go with this is going to be another TNR, but it's going to be a little bit of a downward angle. Did I do that before? I guess I kind of did that before, didn't I? Let's not do that. Let's not repeat ourselves quite so much. All right, so I think I'm going to challenge myself here to go high. So once again, I'm thinking about the 3D volumes. And so this is going to be very challenging. Let me look at the comments here. The cranium is generally wider on profile. Okay, let me think about this. The cranium is generally wider on profile. So you can imagine chopping off a bit of the sides of the construction circle in front view, or inversely, just widen it on side view. The cranium is generally wider on profile. So are you saying, help me out here, are you talking about, the reason I'm confused is because when you think about wider, you think wide. But in profile, you're not seeing the width. So are you just talking about this width, you know, here to here? In other words, you're saying that, so if you were going to instantly address that here, you would basically say she needs to be slightly wider. Is that what you're saying? Am I missing this? Am I misunderstanding you? That does look better for what it's worth. And I echo Maria's comment, you know, tough thing about the cat. Boy, everybody, you know, we've all been there. You know, I remember putting down Shasta. In fact, I wrote a song about it. You guys, yeah, you know what? I'm going to see if I have it. I wrote a song that Natalie and I recorded some years ago. And it was a little too, hey, Eric. Okay, thank you. Full chain animation, thank you. That is seriously helpful. Okay, so to be clear, you guys, full chain animation made the point that the character in profile, and of course he's right, now that I'm thinking about it, now I'm thinking about what he said. Basically, this is what he said. If you draw the skull, well, duh, when you draw the skull sideways, it's obviously this distance here is narrower than this distance here. So in the profile, you have a longer head. I think that's kind of what he's trying to say. So that if you were to maintain a similar, build the profile on an oval, you're obviously going to have a head that's squished, too narrow. So when I stretched out TNR's head a little bit wider just a moment ago, indeed it made it look better. So that's why a lot of drawings tend to have the ears area squished toward the face too much because they stick to a circle. Okay. All right, I like that. Thank you. Okay, so here, again, I say this is going to be a challenging drawing because we're looking up. We're really looking up at TNR. So if we were to identify roughly where I'm feeling the eyebrows would rest on the skull, it's going to be somewhere in this zone, which means these pieces that are bit out of the apple, as Full Chain says, would kind of be here. Okay, and I want to make the edges of those bites close enough together so that I don't inadvertently make her eyes too far apart. Now if I do that, please understand that the eyeball is inside there, so the eyeball is resting in that space. So if we actually draw through, as John Buscema says in How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, he says draw through the character, this is where the eyeball would actually be because it's sitting down inside the larger shape of the skull. Okay, well now in her case we also have this volume that sits, so we've got a sphere with another, essentially another sort of modified sphere underneath it. So this is too simple actually to describe TNR because really what it's supposed to be is more like a circle with, I guess if you just drew another circle under it but then gave it a chin, you wouldn't be too far off. It's something more like this. So it's kind of two spheres working together is the way I see it. But then as as Full Chain was saying, you do need to make sure it's somewhat oblong in the profile, and then if you understand where the jawline is, it's easy to place the ear back far enough. Okay? And then if we draw a straight line through here, that becomes a bit of a guide on where the eye should fall, and there we have a fairly quick drawing of TNR that's actually pretty accurate, I would say. Okay? Making sense? So now we go here, and we got to wrestle with the three-dimensional shapes I'm talking about. Well, number one, the cheekbone being part of that lower volume is going to impose on the eyes a little bit. So I'm thinking about that. All right, and now let me get this a bit symmetrical because I feel like I'm drawing this a little bit wacky. Now, what about the bottom of the chin? Well, it's coming up around like that, more or less. Okay, so the cheek area is kind of foreshortened, and this looks like this is going to be, oh my gosh, this is going to be tricky. Okay, so I draw through all the time, and it's really helpful. Maria, I'm excited to see how you do TNR's nose in this. Yeah. Maria's excited to see how badly I'm going to make her look like some kind of monster because of the... Frankly, my suspicion is it's going to be something like that. It's going to be, there's not going to be much to it. But okay, let me just say I'm going to start over because I'm talking so much as I'm describing it that I'm no longer seeing it. If there's one thing I've been learning lately, it's when things really start going sideways, just erase it and start over. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. Let's take these pieces that are chopped out. Let's go ahead and take into account this sort of Tinkerbell volume like that. And so I'm going to go ahead and say, all right, those eyes they're receded back inside the skull. And now I'm gonna try to draw her. I say try because it's like I'm really setting myself up for failure here, folks. But that's all right. I'm gonna do my best. Okay. So now, if this was the case, basically the volume of the nose would be something like this. So I just don't, I really wonder how they do that in an anime. What would they do? That doesn't feel right. Just a mark like that kind of feels right. Now if we follow this around, her mouth isn't as extreme as Mel's, but it does rest a little lower on her on her face, you know, because she is a teenager kind of thing, right? So, all right, so for sure, these cheekbones are gonna show up, okay? So now I'm not, admittedly, to a degree I'm cheating here because I'm not making the underside of the chin as prominent as I did in the first version there. Maybe I'll try to and see if I can find a middle ground here. So I want to really think about these volumes. Okay, so all right, so now I'm starting to see it, I think. This is like, I swear it's like athletic. The, you know, the challenge of it, right? This is really very interesting, very challenging to see three-dimensionally around your characters, and I guess I would really encourage you guys to try this, man. Just try it. I'm smiling because I can't help it. We cartoonists always make the... Maria, I think I succeeded. I think I did it. I actually think I got it. So I'm trying to see right here where the cheekbone is grabbing, you know, it's in front of the eye. Now I think that the corner of this eye is a little bit misplaced. Not too bad. But you guys may, you know, it looks like she's, it does. You're right, Tiny Salad. It looks like she's, right? Yeah, for sure. If you were going to run with that, you'd probably go, right? Okay, so there you go. That's TNR sneezing. That's hilarious. Yeah, I didn't intend to make it a sneeze, but what the heck? We'll go with it. So that's fun. One thing I didn't say I've kind of been meaning to say, if you actually look at the first video I ever posted on YouTube years ago, 9 years ago, 10 years ago, I actually talked in that video. It was about character sketching in the GIMP, and by the way, this is another thing I'm seeing as I'm working lately. I saw it right away when I was drawing Golek the first time, is how you begin to see that three-dimensionality, and you start to put little indicators in there, and so I'm seeing my own methodology looking more like the way guys who seem, you know, who are better than me and more professional seem to work. So I don't know if that sentence even made sense, but I'm finding myself doing things that I've seen far more skilled people than me do, and it's kind of weird how that just begins to flow into your workflow. So I think the big success here would be this. That line right there is a big success, because I really stuck to my guns and allowed the volume of her cheekbone to have its way in the drawing. And as far as a drawing of TNR sneezing, this is pretty impressive, actually. I think I did a good job. I'm not bragging. These drawings are not as successful, but now let's go ahead and go to the next level here, because I think it's important because of what I do here on this channel. I almost think it's kind of important to ink this, Because this is not, you're not going to have all this modeling, all this 3D stuff going on in a cartoon. So let's just ask ourselves, okay, what would this translate into if you went ahead and, it was making its way into the show? We can't do all these, we can't do shading per se. Of course we do a little bit of shading. We do have shading. But we don't have the ability to put in all kinds of grayscale scumbling to sort of define the volumes. So what we have to do is we've got to reduce this. We've got to reduce it to lines, a minimum of lines. Maybe a slight indication there because she's struggling. Okay. This will be interesting. I'm not going to try to color this in, but you just get these shapes in here. Do we want to put that little indicator there? Maybe. Okay. Let's zoom out a bit. See what this is really going to look like. So again, sort of a la Disney, maybe in a perfect world, you would go ahead and allow this hairline to have a part of it that's actually a second tone other than the main hair color, right? A lighter color, presumably. Of course, I botched the daylights out of that right there. Well, I guess when you zoom in, you can see all kinds of problems. Let's fix that, shall we? So, Art says the shortcut for me using circles, a pyramid for the nose, elongating for the head, a large oval for the skull cap, for the square jaw, pyramid, simple shapes. I think finishing the acting and animation all the way through for the actor episode, really nailing all that down would be really helpful in the best case scenario. Right. Well, and obviously the focus tonight is not on animation, it's on drawing. And as the point that was made very strongly in Disney Animation: The Illusion of Life book, which I got my copy when I was in high school, if you can believe that, so 40 years ago or something. Anyway, let's see what this looks like. Okay, you know what? This is doable. This is actually surprisingly, this preserved the feeling of the pencil drawing better than I expected. Now, I see some things that I think I did sloppily, like that, but and I don't think for Tianara, I'm not going to go in this direction. It's too much of a change at this late date. So basically, this is a no-go. But other than that, which you could certainly do this, use some lines to tell the story, right? But okay, so interesting. So I think Amar's sort of casting his vote for eating my olives, by the way, for my wonderful martini. So Amar is casting his vote. Sorry guys, I gotta eat my olives. For put it this way. If Amar had his way, what I would probably do is I would actually do the entire episode of Salt and Light as a pencil test before any ink and paint happens. I'm not going to do that. I'm way past the point of doing that, but it is a defensible position for sure. there's a very good argument to be made for that approach. So, I cannot disagree. Let us continue. One more drawing. What do we want to do? Yeah. Well, like, I mean, I've got 45 minutes of animation done. It's a little late to decide to just do it all as a pencil test. Oh, current column is hidden. So we got to go here and fire it back up. So, yeah, it's all good. All right, one more drawing, and then I think I'll call it a night. That'll bring us around to about an hour and a half. I've made the point I wanted to make about drawing and volumes and all the rest. Life drawing. So who do we want to draw? Let me think about this. I think it might be interesting to draw Vespar. Vespar is an interesting case because essentially he's got an elongated skull. Okay, so let's say this is a standard, not really a 3/4 view, just a slightly turned front view, really. So actually that'll be part of the challenge of this then, is that we don't have any angles or turns to sort of make our job easier. So, alright, so I'm going to go ahead and put in the guideline, and then, at least for me, chiseling these pieces out seems to be quite helpful. Right. Well, and the other thing, Amar, too, I'm responding to Amar's chat comment where he says, I know you like to see the progress as a motivation tool. What I found, and to be really clear, I'll say emphatically that I've tried it multiple times. And what's happened is, now you could put a show together in your editor that's all pencil tests, or even animatic or whatever. Nothing wrong with that. Again, by the way, what I'm doing here with Vespar is I'm saying, okay, let's think about the dimensionality of that hole that's chopped into his skull and how that informs the placement of his eyes. Okay. So this is the placement of the eyeballs, I should say. It's not actually the eyes. You'll see that his eyes are have a little bit of a unique shape to them. In a bit of a nod to what Amar's saying as far as his technique, I'm going to go ahead and say, let's take this wider. It's almost like an inverted pyramid kind of thing. And so I'm drawing a center line in that shape in order to, actually, I'm going to correct this a little bit. So this is, and by the way, you guys try this. So I'm saying if this is the center line in his head, so this is going to be the center line in his nose, and now let's reduce it to triangles. So you want to kind of stay away from, frankly, I can get away with it in the eyeballs because it's truly a sphere, but generally if you can reduce things to straight lines, it makes it easier to see what the underlying volumes are. Let's put it that way. So this is like an inverted pyramid, and right about there is where it chisels into his skull. So it's sitting up. He basically has Kevin Bacon's nose. I never finished my sentence when I was talking about the video I posted, the first video I ever posted on YouTube. But here's the bottom line: is I was gonna mention a little bit of when you're just sketching and modeling a character, using those. I've said this before, but using these shapes like this, like a C and an S, kind of these sort of French curve type shapes, can really help loosen you up and help you see the form in your mind and help you find it. So in Vespar, one aspect of that would be this curve right here is convex. It's not concave. Now, it could have been concave. I could have went like this. I could have said, well, that's what we're going to do. If you combine that sort of thing, that's a really good way to work two-dimensionally. In other words, if you're drawing flatly and you want to just want to create a character that's kind of like, you know, a two-dimensional flat character, you know, so I'll draw some kind of crazy, something that kind of actually looks like something that Richard Williams would draw, I think. This can be useful. Now, if you take this technique, which is really just sort of a modeling technique in 2 dimensions, and you add the 3rd dimension, then you start to see things like this. You start to see these shapes, right? This, the way this cuts out of the skull. You see what I mean? And this is, so, and by the way, there's nothing I've ever found that makes it easier to do good caricature. Because when you look at a person's face and you're trying to do a caricature, if you break the face down into these little short shapes that are either convex or concave, basically what I found is if you get the pattern right, even if the individual lines are measured wrong a little bit and out of place, you still capture the likeness. And I think that kind of makes sense because that's really what caricature is. It's you're distorting the likeness anyway, which is the whole point, right? But I mean, I think if you combine that sort of whippy way of finding the shape, okay, that wasn't supposed to happen, with keeping the 3-dimensionality in mind, it's kind of the best of both worlds. Now, in this case, we've got this shape that unfortunately is kind of, it's like an elongated leg stuck in, or egg stuck in his face. Okay, so now I'm just going to go ahead and go through and kind of finish out these characteristics. I mean, as I said, he's got a Kevin Bacon nose. And I've always seen him as having somewhat narrow eyes. Not for any particular reason. I'm not trying to make him look like evil or something. Okay, so now all these guides are just so distracting once you've got the form starting to happen. So I'm just going to, oops. Don't erase the good stuff, just erase the bad stuff. Okay, the other thing about Vespar is his chin is chopped off. So he's got this elongated chin, but it's kind of chopped off. It's squared off, you might say. Okay, so if we're going to get the volume, and then the other thing about him is, again, we're into looking at these 3-dimensional volumes. Look at this shape here. Okay, that's why I say he looks like Kevin Bacon, because he's got a little bit of these high cheekbones going on, like that. Basically, Vespar is Kevin Bacon. I don't know why. I have no idea why I did that, but that's just how I saw the character when I conceived him. So it is what it is. So that is actually pretty close. I'm going to raise his eyes up a little bit because he's a little older. He's like a year or two older than Mel is kind of the idea. So now I'm basically reducing it to a cartoon. Now he's the prince and he's got the long flowing locks of hair. Okay, looking at the comments here, wow, Amar's been busy. Also, the commitment is less, and to fix it would be easier than to have to trash hours of work efforts. Okay, so now getting back to what I was saying about the workflow. What I found repeatedly is that if I can take a large and complex task and I break it down into individual accomplishments, if you will, that are pretty much self-contained, kind of can be done in a day. Personally, I just work better that way. Others may not, but for me, I've learned that lesson so many times that I just don't really care to fight it anymore. So yeah, that works. Drawing that contour across there so I can see where that edge in the cheekbone's supposed to be. So same thing kind of here, you know, you got this piece chopped out of his side of his skull, and then his hair has to rest on that, right? Okay, and then again, give the hair some volume. So basically you've got the larger volume that's flowing around, plus you've got specifically the front plane that we talked about earlier. So we got that. And yeah, that's not too bad. His eyes aren't quite right. This one I would say probably is. So now I need to, this one has to be foreshortened just a tiny bit. Yeah, that's not too bad. That pretty much looks like Vespar. And of course, being the prince, he has a little bit of a crown going on. And I think I would say his hairline probably needs to come down a bit. Yeah, but you know, this is a good example of, you know, surprisingly accurate to who the character is supposed to look like, you know. I'm kind of, yeah, that worked. Wow, that's cool. All right, where are we at? Almost time to quit. So, you're thinking about playing with this method tomorrow. Okay, wait. Also, the commitment is less, and a fix would be easier, and after trash hours of work, that's been inked and painted. Well, it is true. It is true, Amar, that basically the thing that I have to deal with at this point is the degree to which I want to go back to things that were done earlier and fix them. In some cases, very much just completely redoing some of them, but not that many. Okay, I mean, I'm in a good place with it, actually. I was looking at episode 1 today, and you know, how fast do you want to go? I mean, you know, it's kind of my rationale for crowdfunding is that I generally give this show about, you know, 2 hours a day is the average, and I want to justify, quote unquote, making it a full-time job. But I don't know if I have a point or if I'm just rambling. I'm having fun drawing. That's what's going on here. So I think ideally, probably for most people, the idea of knocking out a whole episode as a pencil test is probably a good idea. It's probably a very good idea. For me, especially with what I've learned and sort of the technique I've developed, I don't really know if it's a necessary step. But there's no cost. I mean, there's no cost to doing it in the sense that I can knock out a pencil test and then render it, stick it in the show, move on to the next shot, come back to the pencil test later, knock out the ink and paint in a separate session where I'm in the mood to do ink and paint, and then just re-render. So, I mean, I do agree with you. I don't think it's a bad way to work, and I may move more in that direction. Definitely. So, I hear Valerie coming. So I'm gonna sign off and go hang with my beautiful, beautiful, lovely lady. Hey Val, do you want to come and say hi to the whole world of YouTube? What? She doesn't. She doesn't want to say hi. She got a little bit of a toot going on. A little bit of a toot. But I love her. I do. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and, yeah, Maria, thank you for jumping right to it and saying good night. Yeah, and I like Amar's quote. She's got Betty Davis eyes. That was a, God, man, when that was on the radio, you couldn't freaking get away from it. They played it so much. So, anyway, that's it. I'm going to go hang out with Val and then head for nighty night. And you guys are great. It's been fun. Thanks for hanging out. And as you know, there will be more.